number 2. I'm Allison Dela Cruz. I'll be your facilitator tonight. And I just want to introduce, with the benefit of the introduction, the artistic director of About Productions, Teresa Chavez.
Thank you, Madonna.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you. I'm going to be very brief so we can jump into this because we are running a little bit behind. But we're in our 25th year as a company. About Productions, we produce all over LA, all over the country. We've toured. We don't have our own space, and we build original work from the ground up. And we do a lot of educational work, and a lot of it's interdisciplinary and collaborative based in process. And I won't go into all the details of the kind of work that we have done, but you can go to our website, aboutpd.org, and check that out. But because we were turning 25, we began to be somewhat reflective about our place in the landscape of LA. And because we're a small but mighty company, our colleagues are similar. Of course, we have colleagues that are medium scale and large, of course. But a lot of our colleagues are in this world where we're doing a lot of community-based work. And the term first responder kind of came up in my mind in terms of the work that we do on the front lines of our communities. Not necessarily to say that we're always in emergency mode, which is what connotes and think of when you think of first responder, but the idea that we are on the front lines and we do go into the community and we do respond to the needs of the community in many different ways, right? And every group is different. And again, we're focusing a little more on theater companies in this process, but we hope that as we go along that we're going to bring in all kinds of first responders because it really runs the gamut across all the different arts. The other idea was that I always feel that in the arts there's a tendency to ghettoize in many respects what we do. From funders, from other disciplines, and sometimes that's a positive thing, sometimes it's not. But the idea that arts have a crucial and vital value is something that we wanted to discuss and dialogue around, and how can we reframe what we do so that the arts aren't always being put in this corner that we just can't get ourselves out of. That we're just as vital as a true first responder when you think of that, like, social service agencies and firemen and policewomen and, all those types of social service folks. If people better understood what it is that we do, I think the value of what we do would be clear and would change our identity out in the general world. So that's sort of what's kind of underneath this discussion. We started out in our first round just talking about the notion of first responder work, but the kind of work we do, the throwing around the notion of the definition, and we had John Malpe from LAPD here, and we talked about his work and the vital work he has done pretty much right where we are standing downtown with the homeless population. And that video is on our website, firstrespondertales.com. So yes, it is first responder tales. In other words, we're calling it first responder as a definition, but the tales is what the exercise is. It's us talking to each other, having a conversation, and telling the tale. Tonight is Tales from the Trenches, and talking a bit about how do we do what we do. So with that,
Do you want to introduce Ramona and talk about
yes. So. Ramona Gonzalez here, please stand.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi.
Is our blogger, and she has been blogging on our First Responder Tales website and is going to continue to do so. We're just starting to tweet tonight, and we want to get that going. There's a hashtag up there, and we've literally just started this, so we want to make that really vital and part of the dialogue. Ramona's going to be, are you tweeting tonight?
I am.
Okay, great. And, but she's also going to be blogging after the fact and continuing the dialogue, asking questions that we can engage with that flowed up from tonight's conversation, but that will probably organically evolve over the course of the summer, and then we'll have our third event sometime in the late summer, early fall, which is going to be looking at, I can't remember the name of the third one. Someone help me. How to tell the tale. How to tell the tale. And it's about this notion of how do we tell the tale? How do we convey to our public, to the general public, and also to other types of agencies that aren't arts agencies, so that we can maybe begin collaborating with other types of organizations that, and many of us kind of do that or do that in some way or another, but maybe it needs to be more aggressive or more vital or more direct. So that's what we're looking at in the third one. And then the fourth one is some kind of culmination party activity, whatever. We haven't figured out what the fourth one is yet. But, so I think that covers it. And thank you, Ramona, for being here. And let's go to the next step.
Right. So I do also want to just say hi and welcome, and I feel like this is both one of those ideal and surprising moments in Los Angeles where you know you've worked really hard to get people in the room, and there's some really amazing people in the room, but sometimes we spend our time, I look around and I'm like, look at all the blank chairs. But I just want to take this moment to acknowledge, and I think a lot of us know this, we're in May, it's culminating season for a lot of programs, schools are winding up, and a lot of folks in this community of work I know are wrapping up. I was also talking to somebody about like the 24 fundraisers that have happened in the last like week and a half, right? So I want to acknowledge that in the midst of all this work, we all have multiple things happening, as does our community of first responders. But I do want to say thank you very much for being here, and I feel like this is going to be a great opportunity for all of us to really dig in. And I'm so excited that Ramona's going to be tweeting, and we're going to be using the blog this summer to connect to all these people in these chairs who we know, who we work with, who we've paid or been paid by, right? These
and who were here in the first round.
Who were here in the first round.
Tonight they're in the fundraising mode or their rehearsal mode or whatever it might be.
Totally.
And they sent their love and support.
Yes.
They're not in
And I have also thought a little bit about how awesome it would be to have people communities that we've engaged with in the room, and let them also kind of reflect back and talk. And so that might be part of the hope, I think, for the next couple sessions. But I just want to give us an opportunity tonight to connect. So I wonder if you can take us to the slide with the guidelines on it. So as some of you may know, in our work together, it's a great opportunity for a new group of people to talk to each other. How can we all communicate and make sure that we create a safe and respectful place for ourselves, for each other, and for this conversation to kind of percolate and engage? So I offer you a list of communication guidelines that some of my friends are chuckling about, that I have been using as a facilitator.
I used them today.
Yes. Yes. Several of us have probably used these. You might name them differently. This is part of the exciting part of us, of this work. So yeah, just want to invite respect into the room. Being respectful that we're each coming with lots of different and rich things. To practice that active listening part, I've told our fishbowl conversation starters, my goal is for us to just really have this conversation. So it's not that we have to have the next answer, but how can we actively listen and find the jewels and the gifts from each other as we listen to what we're actually saying? Yeah. Honesty is always great and important, and I use honesty in these kind of processes because I know that I'm interested in building with folks. So if we're not honest in the room together, it makes it challenging to build really true, clear, respectful bonds, right? Risk-taking means different things to different people. So for some people, sitting in a small group like this and raising your hand might be the risk, sharing might be the risk. For other people, being in the room might be the risk, right? So I want to honor all the different kinds of risks that people are going to take tonight. And as your facilitator, it really is my role to make sure that we're monitoring this and that everybody feels like you can participate. Yeah? Cultural sensitivity is up there because we want to honor that we all come from different cultures, not just maybe race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, immigration experience, class, neighborhood, all these different parts of ourselves, all these different cultures have different kinds of and ways to communicate. As a young person raised in the API community, I was taught early on not to make eye contact, right? Whereas some communities, eye contact is the way of respect. So just how can we help each other navigate these cultural moments and how they impact how we communicate? Yeah? I invite you to speak from your own experience. Pearson has his set of experiences, I have mine, Leilani has hers, Ramona has hers, right? How can we honor the gifts that you bring into the room, but not feel the pressure to have to speak for your whole community or the whole field? Yeah? Confidentiality. We are filming tonight. We have posted the signs about that. But I do think that there are some possibilities for people to have honest conversations with each other, and I do ask that we keep that confidentiality in the room. Yeah? If there's something that you feel like is helpful to share and you need us to really keep it in the room and stop the tape and not tweet it and not ever talk about it again, because you want to really solve a problem, this is a great way to use these guidelines. To say like, hey, I want to share something that needs to be in this room. Yeah? And then I offer others. So I kind of just buzz through them, but I wonder, do these make sense? Do they seem helpful? Did I miss anything? Drea's ready to add it to the PowerPoint right now. Cool, so can I get a nod of agreement? We all agreed we're gonna abide by these. Awesome, cool, thank you. And I do want to introduce Drea, who's the administrative director over at About Productions, for all of her work. Awesome, great.
I'd also like to introduce Rose Portillo, who's
Thank
our
you.
Associate Director of About Productions. And Chris Anthony is on our board.
Chris Anthony just helped you. Yes. Awesome, so Dre, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so rather than doing any, yes, I want to get up and see who's in the room and how we're doing what we're doing. So for this next part, I know that some of us are tweeting and have various, and if you haven't already visited the food table, feel free. This is the kind of meeting, but not in this section, yeah? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stand up and I'm gonna read a general category. I'm gonna read you a question or a statement, and we're gonna try to group ourselves as best we can just to see who's in the room. And as we do this, it's a silent activity just to help us kind of see who is where. All right, so imagining that this large circular space is the Los Angeles Basin. Where in the LA Basin is the community where you are working? Now before you move, I'm gonna say the statement or question twice. And let me say there may be some statements like this one where you're like, but my organization works with 2. Don't worry. I'm gonna try to give you a couple opportunities to share. And if you only have one place, be cool with that one place, yeah? So here's that statement again.
Which way is north?
From us, let's say real north.
Okay.
And where are we now? Which means nothing to me.
So I think that will be the benefit of, let's figure it out. If this is north, and this is west, and this is south, and this is east, as best you can guess. And we'll have an opportunity to see how we have mapped it. So let me repeat that question one more time. Where in the LA Basin is the community where you are working? So as best guess as you can gather, where in the LA Basin is the community where you're working? We see some adjustments. Yes. Cool. So let's start from the east side. Tell us where you're working.
East LA and
Great. Good one.
East LA, Pasadena, I'm in Pasadena.
Great. Pasadena. Boyle Heights. Great.
East LA.
Boyle Heights.
Little East LA downtown.
Downtown. Great. Great.
Downtown and a little bit further.
Great.
Downtown and South Brooklyn.
Culver City border, LA side, but we work with people everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fairfax.
Cool. So let's breathe that in and exhale. And just because I said I would ask twice, I'll ask one more time. If anyone wants to move and show us a different community where you are working, where in the LA Basin is the community that you are working? I'm gonna have a shift.
I don't have a real sense of
Yes,
direction,
go ahead.
but I think it's okay.
Yes, that feels good. Cool, so friends who have moved, Jenna.
Westwood.
Westwood.
Alvarado and Beverly, whatever that area is called.
Historic Filipino town.
It is historic Filipino town, I
But it's
guess.
like on the
But it's kind of
border. Yeah. Yeah, it's that.
Long Beach.
Long Beach.
Claremont. Pomona College.
Cool. Great. So breathe that in and exhale. This might be an easier question or maybe not. Where in the LA basin is your office or base operations? Where in LA is your office or your base operations? Cool. So we see some shifts. Great. Do we need me to ask that question twice?
No.
No. Great. So let's breathe that in and exhale. Okay, completely different kind of question. How large is your budget? There is no judgment in this room. We're just trying to assess who's in the room. So let's say from volunteer in kind, 5K, 10K, 25K, 100K, 250K, 500K, 1 million plus. Wherever on that spectrum feels good for you.
Am I
accurate?
responding as an organization or as an individual?
It is your choice. There are people in this room who operate as both organizations and individual artists. Great. So let's take a second and just breathe in the spectrum of work. Right? Awesome. Great. So let's breathe that in and exhale. Cool. This is one of those questions I'm definitely going to ask twice. Which racial communities are you working with? African American, Asian Pacific Islander, Latino, Native American First Peoples, White European American, Arab American, Jewish or Jewish American, multiracial, biracial, or other? Yes. Multiracial was kind of my all of the above, but it could also be for mixed race people. Yes? So let's see where we landed, shall we? Cool. Friends over here, tell us which communities you're working with.
African American, mainly and Latino, but it falls under other all.
Okay, great.
Yeah, primarily Latino, but there's Asian, African American, it's just kind of big.
Great.
Yeah.
Asian American, but kind of over there too, like Latino, African American, multiracial too.
Cool.
Same thing, so I figured the center.
Center. Great.
30 languages spoken on Fairfax High School campus. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's diverse.
Yeah.
Primarily Latino, but strong Filipino and other Asian and occasionally African American.
Cool.
Latino mixed race. Yeah, for our educational work.
Yes.
Latino. Latino.
Great.
Predominantly Latino,
Great.
Filipino, and
And that helps us as organizers of this event, helps me to understand who I need to build with to get more diversity in who is working with which communities, yeah? Great.
I'm gonna move a little bit because I do work to work
Yes.
too.
Yes, and does anyone else need to place them? So I said I would say this twice. So, which racial communities are you working with? Awesome. So let's breathe that in and exhale. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to read this next part for you. Which gender communities are you working with? Women, men, transgender, mixed gender communities. Women.
Where do you want?
So sure, thank you, I'm sorry. Women, men, transgender, and mixed gender communities. Great, so let's hear. Mixed gender communities? Great, anybody working in transgender communities? Okay. Okay, great.
Men and women.
Okay.
Men and women, but mostly men.
Okay. Cool. And nobody currently just doing only women work, yeah? And this, of course, goes for youth too. But great. Thank you. So let's breathe that in. And let it go. All right. So, which shelter communities are you working with? Which shelter communities are you working with? Homeless, traditional housing, public housing, renting, nomadic, single home owning, multi-home owning, residential property owning.
Before I forget.
Shall I say those again?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Because I know it's a different way to frame this kind of work for some of us, right? And this was really inspired by the first round and hearing the work of LA Poverty Department. Which shelter communities are you working with? Homeless, transitional housing, public housing, renting, nomadic. So nomadic would be next to renting. Single home owning, multi-home owning, residential rental property owning. So most of us in the room right now are working with renting populations or single home owning populations. Is that what you are?
Public housing.
And public housing. Great. Okay. Cool. So let's breathe that in. Gorgeous. We're over halfway there. There's only 4 statements left. So we've talked about race, gender, where in the basin you're working, where in the basin your office is. And now we're going to talk about the age community that you work with. Yeah? So, infant to pre-K, here. K through 8, here. High school, here. 20s, the undergraduate communities, in that traditional 20s sense. 30 to 50-year-olds. 30 to 50-year-olds. 60 to 80-year-olds. 80 plus. Right. Cool. So let's do a quick survey. Yes. K through 8. Awesome. Is this our high school?
Middle
Middle school.
Middle
school.
I'm sorry, I didn't make that. Yes.
And I'm adding to Rose, and adults, and elders.
Great. Adults. Awesome. Great. Yes. Cool. So let's breathe that in. Awesome. Who knew mapping was going to be such a thing, right? Okay. So, for those folks who are working in youth contexts, this is a question that I have. For folks who are working with adult populations, if any of these settings also resonate, I invite you to find them. Okay. I'll start here. Which youth contexts are you working within? School-based programs? After-school-based programs? Social service agency partnerships? Social service agency partnerships? Parks and or recreation centers? Traditional cultural spaces? Or other? School-based programs? After-school-based programs? Social service agency partnerships? Parks and or recreation center? Traditional cultural spaces? And other?
I answer you and interpreted that.
Thank you.
A little of the traditional cultural center.
Yes, a little of the traditional cultural center. Great, so are these our traditional cultural centers? No.
Yeah.
You're outside, great. Other? Outside, okay. School-based programs?
Well, school-based, after school, and cultural.
Cool.
School-based.
School-based?
School-based.
School-based. School-based and after school?
Same spread,
Yeah.
school-based, after-school.
And more after-school social service.
Great.
Ditto.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And traditional.
Yeah. What was the traditional cultural center?
Yes.
You are a cultural center as well.
Don't know whose tradition
Correct.
it is. I'll take it.
Actually, I will amend that. That list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's breathe that in. You guys are doing great. Only 2 things left. So this is about you, as you, the person. Knowing that many of us often wear several hats, I want you to move to the one that feels right for you for right now. What is your role in this kind of work? What is your role in this kind of work? Over here, artist. Teaching artist, organizer, producer, administrator, participant, newbie, or do you wear multiple hats and you're a one-person show for yourself or your organization? That's right here. Yes, this is the multiple roles, one-person show in your work.
Oh, there's a face.
Okay. So let me guess.
I feel the need to make a disclaimer in that, yes, it's a one-person show, and no, it's not a one-person show.
Right. How many people
We
that's
are
true for you as
responsible
well?
for bringing people to the table.
Okay, so that's not just for you there, I see other people. So this is the multi-role, one-person show world?
Today, you might change later.
Great. And when,
You say facilitation.
thank you,
design stuff.
facilitator program design. Does that shift, that might move some of us, great. So let me come this way,
Organize and produce.
great,
Organize administration.
cool,
Produce and administration.
great, awesome. So let's breathe that in. All of the complexity, and yes, all of these, I really am trying to help us find the spectrum, because I feel like I'm learning a lot. Yeah? Okay. Last question. What is the kind of work, what kind of work do you make with communities? Yes, and I know that there may be multiple things, so I could ask this question twice. All right, and the you is you or your organization, however that works. So, theater, dance, music, writing, which I know is also part of theater. All of these things could be part of theater, but you see why I'm delineating, yeah? Visual art, photography, film and video, multidisciplinary, traditional, cultural, other. We can put right here in the middle. Yeah? Great. Ramona, tell me where you're standing.
I'm standing in the writing section.
Great. And other side of Jesus, where are you standing? Theater. And I don't know your name in the blue shirt. Where are you standing? Armando.
And 2 different spaces, theater and multidisciplinary.
Great. Anyone else beyond multidisciplinary or theater?
Theater and multidisciplinary. There you go.
Yeah.
Great. Jenna, what?
Multidisciplinary film theater.
Okay. Cool. Great. That also, yes, tells us a lot. Awesome. Let's take a breath in. Give yourselves a round of applause. Okay. So, what I want to do is invite us all. We were going to do a fishbowl, but because of the organic, beautiful size of this group, we're going to invite all of us to bring a chair into this center. Again, thank you all for coming. I do want to introduce you to our conversation starters, who we've invited to look over the questions. Some folks have answers written down. Some folks have thought about it. They're going to be spontaneous. really we wanted to open it up as an opportunity to kind of hear from folks from different worlds within this world of first responders, to be able to think and talk about, yes, these tales from the trenches and kind of how are we able to sustain ourselves, what financial models are people operating in, what contexts are people operating in, and really what's been an approach or a strategy to their survival. And so I'm going to open it up as a conversation for these three beautiful folks. And then certainly would love if you all have questions that you want to ask. We're going to sit in this configuration for about 20 minutes or so.
Since we're so small, maybe we should
Yes,
just
that's
go
exactly
around
where I
and-
was going to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come and join us in the circle.
Oh.
You got here just in time.
Perfect timing, in fact.
All right.
And when you're ready, there's food and drink and whatever.
Okay.
Awesome. And Teresa was reading my mind. I was going to sit around. So let me introduce you really quick to our panel, our conversation starters. Here to my left is Jenna Delgado, who's currently has a master's in finance. Is a PhD candidate at the UCLA Department of World Arts and Culture Dance. She's an artist and a dialogue facilitator with over 20 years of experience designing community-based art projects with urban-based populations. Jenna's dissertation research engages with critical theory, critical pedagogies, and activist art theory to investigate issues of identity, community building, inclusion, and empowerment in arts-based activism. And Jenna and I know each other from many years as facilitators, as community folks who've grown up here in Los Angeles. To her left is Pearson Blates. He is the co-founder of the Greenway Arts Alliance and the Melrose Trading Post, operating every Sunday at Fairfax High School and every Saturday at Taft High School. And our last conversation starter panelist is Jesus Reyes. He is the creative artistic director of East LA Rep. Yeah. So let's say hi and thank you and welcome to them. All right, so we would love to know who all of you are. So really quickly, I know that all of our titles can be really long. Would love you to tell us your name and maybe one of your titles, if you have multiple, just so that we can move through.
My name is Leilani Chan. I am the Artistic Director of Tieta Productions.
Rose Portillo, Associate Director of About Productions.
Armando Wipa, Administrative Coordinator at Red Cat.
Jasmine Garza, Assistant Program Coordinator at Mitchell Trent Elementary School.
My name is Brenda Bandon. I'm the co-founder of Urban Theater Movement.
Ramona Gonzalez, blogger for About Productions.
Abel Salas, publisher of Brooklyn and Boyle.
Teresa Chavez, Producing Artistic Director of About Productions.
Chris Anthony, Associate Artistic Director of the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles.
My name is Bobby De La Cruz, and I'm a volunteer here at Inner City Arts. Yeah.
Yes, hi, I'm Dolores. I'm the theater director here of the Rosenthal Theater at Inner City Arts. Welcome.
Thank you. Andrea?
Andrea, you want to introduce yourself? I'm Andrea. And I'm Alison De La Cruz. I'm an independent artist in Los Angeles who has worked with About Productions, is currently a producing artistic core member of Tieta Production, a teaching artist for Shakespeare Center Los Angeles, and I just picked up a contract at the Pasadena Playhouse. So, on the hustle.
That's your title.
That's my title, on the hustle.
I'm a hustler, baby. You just got
Theater of the hustle, right? Yeah. Theater on the hustle.
You're going to be doing outreach like Peter Harris?
Yes, exactly. Awesome. So we have invited and asked Pearson and Jenna and Jesus to kind of get us started in thinking about this idea of how our financial models help us sustain the creative and engagement work that we are doing as individual artists or producers or writers or entities, And for some folks I know in this room, the creative and the engagement work is intertwined. There's no separation. And I know for some folks, there are departments in your companies where one department is creative and one department is creative engagement or engagement. And so it just kind of varies. And I hope that you've seen in this cultural mapping, our goal is to really acknowledge the spectrum and just hear more about that. So I've asked them to just kind of tell us, like, so my first question to the three of you is just that first question, how does the financial model that you're working in, how has that supported your ability to do both the creative and the engagement work, or the creative engagement work, however that kind of folds out for you? And I'm really excited that Jenna's here because she can also talk as an individual artist, kind of how that work and facilitator and program designer, how that has affected. So I don't know who would like to get us started, thoughts about.
I'll start since I wrote things down. I didn't know what we were, so I just wrote them all down. So sorry if they sound kind of written red. So I'll definitely talk through the lens of East LA Rep and also through this project I'm working at, Center Theater Group. And I will say that something I didn't write down was that company hires me for my for my connections in the community, and they have a huge budget. And what I don't have has given rise to this network, which is kind of interesting. East LA Rep has a free space, no rent, and that has allowed us to explore different ways of working, different programs or projects to offer and take on. It was having a physical space that made me think differently, and it was having a free space that made me think a lot about exchanging space for programming. The free space forced me to think differently about what I really wanted to accomplish versus paying the bills. The exchange with our partner in the space forced us to find ways of giving back, then try again, and then again. It's a luxury, but it's also a luxury that can be lost tomorrow. The only thing else I can add is that our financial model is at zero, and as we started as a theater company at zero, it was about obviously our own personal money, and then when we transitioned into a creative center, it was still zero, but now the financial sort of model was our collective work and the exchange. And we're still figuring that out because that's relatively new, and so it's supported us. Obviously, free space, is amazing, and so what we've been able to do with free space is take risks and do things that we weren't doing before, and then allow others to share in that, hopefully. Also, the financial model of zero has not particularly instigated within us initially, and I'm being very honest, initially the sort of need to really make that zero and add ones next to it or other numbers next to it, if that makes sense. So anyways, I'll leave it with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jenna Pearson, things to add?
Well, I can only talk, I've never run an organization, I've only run programs within organizations, but for the last 11 years, I've predominantly worked as a consultant in different organizations, so I feel like I can only speak from like the individual perspective, and I've worked in social services, I've worked in all nonprofit, but worked in social services doing theater for health education reasons. I've worked in youth development, doing visual art for youth development. I've worked in doing theater for gender equality, relationship negotiation, so in different contexts. And the funding streams dictated a different understanding of measuring what we were doing. So it kind of dictated how we engaged and defined how we were engaging with mostly youth that we were doing work with. And I think for me, having worked in those different fields, it's helped me create a very complicated understanding of what engagement can be. So I tend to bring that sensibility in with an organization, preferably when they have the same sensibility, but also in moments when they don't have that particular same sensibility. And I feel like I'm going to hijack the conversation if I elaborate on that a little bit, because I think it gets away from the question.
Great, thank you.
So I think I need to quickly describe our model, or nothing makes sense if you don't understand our model. So 16 years ago, we started a flea market at the corner of Melrose and Fairfax every Sunday called the Melrose Trading Post. And at the same time, we started a theater called the Greenway Court Theater. All of this happens on the campus of Fairfax High School. And 16 years later, we're still going strong. We are, at this point, I think sadly, the performing arts program for Fairfax High School. And we do dance and theater and film and spoken word. Then we have a whole professional arts component that happens within the theater. We produce theater. We have a very successful spoken word event that happens every Tuesday night called the Poetry Lounge. And then the flea market brings in 4,000 or 5,000 people every Sunday. And it is a tremendous boon for a nonprofit. It raises a lot of money for both us and the school. So I want to just comment on the concept of partnership, specifically a partnership. We're in partnership with our landlord. LAUSD owns the property. So what does that do? Tremendous benefits if you're smart about it. If you know who your landlord is and you know that they are in charge, they are, and that will never change. So you have to make sure in that partnership that there's true benefit. In fact, our strategy at the beginning, and remains so, is anything that we receive, they get twice as much, no matter what. That's what's kept us alive for 16 years. This is not an equal relationship. This is a relationship that LAUSD benefits. And for anyone who's worked with a school district before, they can get in your way very, very quickly. It is harder for them to get in your way when there's such a clear benefit to the students who are attending their school, because in the end, it's their mission to educate. So tremendous benefits to a partnership. I highly recommend it, especially with a school that has property, facilities, and you can call a brand. Everyone knows where the high school is. Everyone knows where that middle school is in the neighborhood.
And is that part of, in that model, does the Trading Post fund staff and programs, or how does that work in your model?
It does. So half the money from the Trading Post goes directly to what the school needs. So we buy desks and park benches and a development team that funded an entire football stadium. Really, a lot of stuff. And then the other half comes to us, and that is earned income money. So we get to spend that however we want, as long as it serves the mission. And you can guess that a lot of that money goes toward administration, and we work very hard to find other sources of income for programming, and then the hardest is productions. So it's kind of in that order. So events go toward program, events go toward theater, then that Trading Post covers our salaries and all that we have at Greenway. We're a very lucky organization as far as resources.
Awesome. Anyone have a question at this point? Yeah.
Outside of what you have, do you still find yourself getting outside grants or getting or having to fundraise for stuff, or that covers it?
No, we do. We have I'm always surprised that the Trading Post in the end only covers about half our budget, so we do a lot of fundraising. grant writing. Our model is of interest to funders. They see us doing a lot of work on our own, so they give money. They know we're going to be around next year because of our earned income, and they get a lot for their money. Our grants are much smaller than what our budget is. That's because of the high earned income. So we could be getting major grants. We don't. We get smaller. Well, it depends how you define small and big grants get. Yeah.
Teresa, was the strategy at the beginning that you would start this, in a sense, for-profit business and the not-for-profit? Although I don't know if they're literally that, but one is clearly a earned income earner, and the other one is the not-for-profit entity that spends the money.
The social enterprise.
Yes. So was that it from the beginning?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you it was a strategy. It was not. I was an out-of-work actor who was trying to figure out how to get arts education at Fairfax. And really what I was practicing that, a long time ago. I was a yogi practitioner. I really honestly was just trying to figure out a way to practice a type of yoga that's service. And really I was making decisions based on that, and it really worked. So I had let go at that time of what I could do to get to there. I was just saying, oh, that might work. And we would try it. I don't think that same philosophy would work in my current position with all my responsibility, but back then it worked well.
So you were already on the campus doing?
No, we knocked down the door. We called, phone hang up. Unbelievable how adamant Fairfax High School was in not getting help. It was incredible. Yeah, we crashed a parent meeting that we thought was going to be a room full of hundreds of parents, and there were 3, but the principal was there, and we got a chance to talk about what we wanted to do.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear. I guess I'm not clear completely on how this started. Is there what arts are offered at Fairfax, or were being offered? How were you? I don't know if I
Sure, what arts we offer?
Or were offered by the high school, and how did you guys come to actually
There was so little going on that when we got there was nowhere to plug in. Right. What they needed, especially 16 years ago, for anyone knows where the district was at that point, they just needed books, desks. The campus was a mess. They needed brooms. It was just basic stuff that they needed. So a fundraiser was of interest to them. Arts education was of zero interest to them at that time.
And were you a teacher? You were concerned for that school via?
I was an artist who wanted to do the arts education. I got in there. They didn't need it. They needed this money. Yeah, and the flea market came out of that need.
Was that your brainchild?
It was. I had worked as a coffee espresso set up at another flea market and watched how it worked.
The observation tools of the artist.
I can't tell you how close entrepreneurship and being an artist is. It's so similar. It's just confidence that skill set can be used in that world too.
And that makes me wonder, in hearing about your partnership with CTG, that impetus was really about can you talk a little bit more about them? Was they wanted to serve Latinos, or how did that kind of?
CTG got a grant, a small grant from TCG, on a How I Think It Do It grant, and to be clear, I work in the education department and community partnerships. And the director was already thinking long-term when she started, but her first 6 years was about getting the education part of the whole department figured out and restructured. And then the community partnerships part of the title came into play. So she had been looking long-term, so when this came about and I came about and relationship building, they got this grant. But they were already looking forward to hiring a program manager. And because of our friendship and being part of a network, which is so important, she knew that I was working in Boyle Heights, specifically in East LA, and their grant was tied to Boyle Heights. And their costume and prop shop is located in the southern part of Boyle Heights, and they were wondering, how do we get to know our neighbors? Is this another space for programming? You know, it's not an audience development sort of infrastructure, but it's about just starting on the ground. And so then I was brought in. Thankfully, it's my neighborhood. I live there, I work there, and we've set up, that network there. So it was nice and easy to turn around and invite me in to take the role of the program manager because of East LA Rep and all that. So it was helpful to have somebody on the ground that knew a little bit of the community instead of bringing in somebody who may not have the time, because actually the grant is done in June 30th, and I came in October. So that would have been a little bit probably more difficult for somebody outside of the community, or maybe not.
And when that grant ends, how does
the program manager job was already, it wasn't about the grant. It was entitled, again, it was part of her long-term strategy, and so I'll work until I want to work, and the grant will end, but then we got another one, so that'll continue, luckily. Knock on wood.
So thinking about these models of partnership, and I know, Jenny, you talked a little bit about, as an artist working in social service agencies, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of those kind of challenges or awarenesses that you had in being in partnership with social service agencies, which I think sometimes can feel in opposition to the kind of work we do, or they don't quite get what we do, even though we're trying to help them achieve goals. Mm-hmm. How did that?
Well, in most of the context when I was working with social service organizations, the initial time what introduced me to social services was I was hired as an actor in a theater group that was doing HIV education. So the actors were teenagers, but we were all professional actors, so we were asked to have those skills, and so we were also trained to do HIV education, sex health education, counseling, all of these things, so their emphasis was on what they defined as the social service aspect of it. They really didn't support the development of the art making or revising or the relevance, and we were working with highly marginalized communities. We were performing in plays that were about homeless youth who are incarcerated, youth in domestic violence situations, and we weren't not working with mainstream youth, so there was a need, a very savvy crowd, completely savvy crowd. Like if you're faking anything, they see it instantly. So it was imperative that all of the actors involved were very familiar with the situations in the plays, which means a particular kind of cast, and it means a particular kind of script, and updating and revising and keeping on it. So funding often wasn't allowed to go to researching, revising, enhancing those kinds of creative skills, and there was a lack of understanding in that particular organization that is half of what we're doing. It's not just the educational things that we're offering. Our ability to connect with them on an emotional level opens the door in a way that a counselor walking into a room can't do on their own. And so we were giving them the double whammy of being able to make the emotional connection with them, but then also having the skills to counsel and educate and have those really difficult conversations. In other contexts, it's kind of consistent in social services. Well, outside of, I've worked in social services where folks who came in from the arts, folks left the arts and came into social services. So in those situations, the artist understood what it took to make something powerful. That it's research, it's time, it's valuable. You can't just assume that you throw paint on canvas and that it's going to have some sort of impact, or that you throw words on a paper and it's going to have some sort of impact. In those situations, it was pretty productive, but outside of that context, in social service organizations, or even in some youth development organizations I've worked with, or empowerment organizations, there's this lack of there's this assumption that you put art in a room and it's going to do something. regardless of who the artists are or who the performers are or what the content is.
Context.
Or the context is. And so there's this kind of ghettoizing, you were using that word earlier, there's this kind of ghettoizing within that context, even though they're relying on art to be the intervention, there's this ghettoizing of what it takes to produce really good work and effective work. Mm-hmm. And there's this contradiction because in social services, everything has to be measured. Mm-hmm. So every aspect of the impact you're making is measured either through a survey or a focus group, or the number of people who walk into your clinic, or the number of people who, you know, increase their awareness or their understanding or actually change behavior. They're tracking all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And if any of those numbers shifted, they didn't understand that maybe we need to pay some attention to what's in the content. Mm-hmm. So the lack of shared vocabulary between the art making and the social service field was always a difficult, it was always a difficult process to synthesize those things, unless somebody came in with an observational powers from both, you know, kind of disciplines. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Totally.
Okay.
Because I think it helps us kind of get a sense of like these range of partnerships and the ways in which they can be strategic and helpful, the way that they become accidental, and then how when these partnerships occur, everybody wants something, right? And so how do we kind of juggle all those? One of the other questions we had offered in prep was, what has been the most surprising thing about the financial landscape? And I kind of gave you a range of numbers, right? In the last 5 years, maybe the last 7 years, or the last 10 years. And I just wonder for you, in the work that you've been doing, what has been the most surprising thing?
I'll read it again.
Awesome.
So much easier. So I did kind of. For East LA Rep, the financial landscape has remained the same. We've always operated on the last production's profits, if any. Silly fundraisers, blood, sweat, tears, and our own money. So that is to say, you know, we weren't looking at the financial landscape until very recently. To varying degrees, we weren't really looking at it. It was about survival mode and not even survival mode. That's wrong. It was just about creating. So there are these artistic blinders. Yeah.
Jenna, what's been the most surprising thing?
Well, I think when I rarely ever work as a teaching artist or as an artist I am a facilitation artist, I like to say. When I do work with organizations, it's usually I'm usually a facilitation director, or I am designing the educational or the critical aspect of the program. So I tend to work with projects that have the capacity to have different staff focus in on different elements of it. And at one point it seemed like it's a very tiny niche within a very tiny niche. I feel. And I think I bring some particular qualities because of my background. I think I also have an inclination to observe, and there's also some facilitation stuff, and I think I've always been a nerd, so looking at things critically and trying to tease that stuff out, and having been a young actor in really difficult contexts kind of gives me a sense of how to try to, you know, I have a certain perception of how to add to a program or how to, I don't know, it's easier for other people who work with me to explain what I do. But
are you talking about like making that case for why, if a program is having to downsize, like being in a robust staff situation, if you're used to being the facilitation director among a group of staff,
right,
but then in the last like 10 years, budgets have gotten smaller, the expectation is you should have larger output numbers with smaller numbers of actual staff and costs. It sounds like that's part of what you've been kind of navigating.
What you said. Okay. No, but exactly. There was this moment, I may have been 10 years ago, well, definitely before the economic crash, where I was getting approached by different programs who were interested in, they didn't really who are interested in developing those parts of their programs. And in the last, I would say 4 or 5 years, there's a lack of interest in it because I think people are in survival mode. So what I tend to do tends to be the easiest to pull out and still do what the kind of work that they're doing.
So like if they already have an existing model, they don't need to bring in a new designer because they already have a model that works. So we're going to keep on this model right now because that's all we can afford. Awesome, thank you. Kirsten, what about you?
Surprising. So in the last 4 or 5 years, the model that we have been using has names for it, and it's actually being encouraged by foundations to use earned income, and social enterprise is a buzzword, and none of that was around when we were starting up. So it's interesting that we're operating now within a model that funders talk about. I don't know if that's helping us much. It was actually, I think, easier when they understood it less and saw that we were something unusual. Now it's not. It's something they're encouraging.
Does it feel like there's more demand on the funder side for you to go and teach your model to other people, or are you pulling away?
Are you hearing that we're scalable a lot?
Yeah. I mean, there's been push to share the model. Now we're doing it at Taft High School, and it's hard. It's hard to have one at Fairfax and another school, and we're trying to figure out what that model is. But they're smart to push us in that direction because it is forcing my partner and I to really see what works uniquely at that corner of Melrose and Fairfax and what really will work at other locations. Particularly the flea market and using the property as a public high school property as a way of making money for the school. It's tricky.
I think often on paper, and I think from a funding perspective, it's like, well, it works here, so pick it up and move it over there. And it's like, that's a completely different culture over here. They have a completely different relationship to all these things that they may even relate to the language you're using, but they define it very differently.
That's right.
And exactly what you're saying. I know whenever, first time any place, it's hard. And it's a mutual coming together of acknowledging that these are actual cultures and they're different. And you can't just, I got so tired of hearing replication. Can you replicate this? And then you're really in. And no, because what works really well here, I've spent a really long time to make sure works for this community.
And that's not the piece that gets replicated. Like that's the piece that needs to get replicated, the cultural specificity and relevance and how what you're doing works.
And the fact that it is going to look different and it should look different. And time needs to be taken to figure it out together.
Funders will often look at number of people served, right? Obviously. So if you're, I think it's most rewarding to be in one area and go deep in that area, and that's been hugely rewarding for us. But it's caused a problem in certain funding circles. You're encouraged to grow your numbers, but it's not as fun, as being like in your area and working with the people, the same people, and seeing growth in your area. It's when you go somewhere else, you're somewhere else. You're outside your world, and it's important. Again, I'm glad we're doing it, but it's not the same. I wish funders would really encourage serving less people, or don't give the money to organizations like us. Give the money to maybe 5 or 6 small organizations with a very little budget who partner together and say that I'm doing this in these areas, look, all the people you're serving, take a risk and give this pot of money and we'll split it. That would be another way of going deep in 5 different areas or 6 areas.
So Melrose Trading Post is in Fairfax, Melrose, and then
Yeah.
Taft is
Taft
Valley,
is
right?
in Woodland Hills.
Woodland Hills.
Yeah, yeah. It's also a Title I, there was a Title I school. I think they're going to lose it this year because they just went charter this year. But it's a very different environment than Melrose. And Fairfax is now the most trendy, it's not Melrose anymore, it's Fairfax Avenue. It's so trendy. And it's such a scene on that street, and we're the anchor of that street, so it drives. That's the Trading Post side. And then Fairfax High School students are just some of the most interesting, cool students you ever want to come across at that school. Again, 30 languages spoken, and so much that's happening on that school that, it's just different than Taft.
I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
learning a lot.
Yeah.
Who are these funders that are funding this?
Greenway?
Greenway? Okay.
Yeah, so
Greenway.
Greenway is
the program
nonprofit.
that is wanting you to go to Taft.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not, LAU just has nothing to do with the interest.
Yes. So what's funding us going to another school is Whitney and I are just putting our money in to do it. If we would have gone to an investor or a funder, it would have been complicated. So we wanted just to go give it a shot at another location and partner with their booster club.
But I don't know if it's like LAUSD kind of taking an interest in.
So Steve Zimmer, our school board representative, is a fantastic school board member, and he's the one who greased the wheels and made this, facilitated this happening. Believe me, he is in our corner when it comes to arts education, when it comes to unique strategies and supporting schools.
Cool. No, and I think that's what's really great about this process. One more question?
So said something about earlier about you have no, because you have the money coming in from grants or the program, you guys aren't really interested in I guess I understood you correctly, you guys are not really worried or interested in about, our budget, what do we make? So the freedom that allows you, am I correct in that? No, I understood earlier, before this question.
Oh, okay.
You said that as far as revenue, I guess, for your company, you said something about it being zero, and you said, to be honest with you, we're not really worried about the money.
So I wasn't talking about revenue, I was talking about budget.
Budget, okay.
Being zero, which I guess is the same. So I said the free space forced me to think differently about what I really wanted to accomplish versus paying bills.
Right.
So not having to worry about pay bills, it may not make sense, but I wasn't thinking this way before, so it not having to worry about paying for production and then another production and another production, even if it's a stipend for an actor or whatnot, freed me up to think about other things to program, other projects to take on. Stop being a theater company and being a creative center, trying another model for us. So that's what I meant by that.
But Jesus, you don't have to worry about rent and lights and water, stuff like that.
Right.
But to put up a show, you still have to pay for wood and nails and stuff like that. Right?
So I don't know if I say this later, but I think I do. But
you want to transition us into that?
Yeah, I don't know what has been achieved. Okay, so what has been one key approach or strategy to organizational survival? Sorry, I'm jumping to like 2 lines. So this might go together with that. Okay. So East LA Rep used to be a theater company, and then life happened. And seasons change, people change. I think it's an expose song.
That's right. That was the one in my mind.
Yeah, right.
Expose is not lost on this crowd.
I love expose. So because of life happening, people born, people die, and all this stuff, it helped me. It focused me, refocused me. So then the theater company had to transition because I was transitioning as a founder, as a co-founder. And so I knew to be happy I had to change, and it had to change. And so restructure. So what has been one key approach or strategy to organizational survival? Restructure, build in structure, and add flexibility. Bring in people that believe in the mission and vision but don't need to be artists. Rewrite the mission and vision, rebrand, reclaim the common goal. Make sure the right people were on the team, add new people, and continue to evolve at a slower pace. Don't worry about what others say or think, strengthen networks. So the theater company, and this is the irony, the theater company went away, the Creative Center rose because I had a free space, and I had a space, and I had a big space, and I traveled, and I saw these weird different things in a new way. And then friends needed a space, and they were so happy to have a space, and strangers needed a space. And we started to learn that we could trade. And so I was happy to not ever direct a play again. I was happy never to produce another play again. I was happy to not worry about, directing a play, rehearsing a play, closing the play, and then doing it again. I was happy not to worry about audiences showing up or not showing up. Because I then started to think about, I'm a theater company that I open my door to my community, but they don't show up.
Right.
Whose fault is that? That's my fault. That the people literally around the corner do not know who I am, what I do. So all this, and this is, if we had a margarita, we would have a longer talk. But just so you get the sense of where East LA was or what. So now, the productions that we do, okay, so the irony was that after we transitioned into a Creative Center model, we have more theater than we've had before. So in 1 year, we had more theater because other people, like we came here.
But you weren't doing it all
But
anymore.
we weren't doing it.
Right.
But we were using our space for rehearsals, for readings, for workshops, for, whatever, and then producing there or here. And so the cost was minimal, and whatever, if there was a door fee. So then now we don't do plays per se. We'll do a stage reading, or we'll do an interdisciplinary something, or we do something like he does, but indoor. We do a lot of stuff. And the part about people, I don't care what people think, was because it's like, well, when's your next show? Or it looks like you're not doing anything. Well, fuck you, I'm actually doing a lot. But you have no idea. You don't know, because I'm not doing what we used to do, which was 3, 4, 5, 6 plays, like the traditional American Western theater, which was like stupid of us to think we could do. And I say that later.
Well, I think that's a great way for us
to
transition into this conversation about strategy and what your one key strategy is. And I just want to do a kind of time check on awareness. It was our hope to spend about 20 minutes in this process and then break up into smaller groups. So it is my feeling that we'll talk about this question: what is our one key approach or strategy to organizational survival or individual survival for those of us who are on the hustle, right? And then what we can do is maybe break up into smaller dyads and have an opportunity to kind of talk to each other and kind of rotate around so that we can get to some of these ahas.
I think we're on the wrong slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my fault.
Can you, no, there's.
It's okay, blame it on Jesus.
Yes, blame it on me.
It's just easier.
Always blame it on Jesus.
Maybe the strategy question may not have made it.
Yeah, we skipped the what has been one challenging lesson over the next one.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all part, I think it just got deleted in this part.
Leilani,
I saw your, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted, what is this free space you speak of?
Really?
He's a trade.
And what is your relationship to that space? I mean, it is exhausting.
So it's a space in Boyle Heights by the USC Medical Center, and it's an old armory, and Legacy LA runs it. They serve it. It's a social service organization for the Ramona Gardens area. And they had an idea to bring in other agencies before the bubble burst. And I happened to walk in, I was doing some scouting, and I walked in and they had this huge warehouse. And we were in the middle of our transition and we needed a home, and because we have always were itinerant. And then I just said, can we have space here? Because it's you know, you should come visit, it's there. And they said, sure. In return, our goal was to give back to their constituents, their people, which is part of what the learning that all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, so we can give back, and that makes sense, and then we can do more of this. But it's been tough because there's still, we have to do more work on our side to bring that to the table, to push it, because that social service organization still doesn't care about arts to some degree. It's not part of their mission, but they do understand the value of it, but it's really not at the top. So it's been difficult to figure out, like, no, we can give you a creative writing class because it helps your kids become better writers when they apply for college. Oh, but the kids think that's boring.
Yeah.
Like,
see,
okay,
no, they
so
don't understand.
so anyway, so we're working, but
So it sounds like some similar experiences
Yeah.
that Jenna has had. Okay. Jenna or Pearson, I'm wondering if you want to share something for us about what has been a key approach for you or a strategy to the organizational or individual survival over these last 5, 7, 10, 16, 20 years.
Yeah, so over the last probably 10 years, without a doubt, it was hiring and partnering with people that knew much more about what I was doing than I did. Yeah, it definitely works to get people that are passionate about what you are doing, that are willing to work hard, and then they need to see in you that you'll facilitate what they care about and not get in their way too much, really, in the end. I often think that's the job of a good manager, is to facilitate and not get in the way of people that are doing good work. So that's really worked for me personally, or we would have never grown to our level. I just don't have the skill set to do that. And then I think for overall the 16 years, I alluded to it at the beginning, is I really wasn't holding on to any one dream or what I had to accomplish, or I would still be sweating it out, directing and producing and trying to act, and not having enough time and feeling ill-prepared on stage because I was so busy and getting the show up. All of that anxiety, if I would have held on to that, I would not have this, what I think is a treasure at Greenway. So I really let go of that in a way and just try to stay present in what I was doing, and all sorts of interesting things opened up. And now really what's most important to me now is making sure that I sign a lot of checks every 2 weeks, and I need to make sure that those people are paid, and I have 250 vendors that set up every Sunday whose livelihood depends on the continuation of the flea market. So I care about that. And then every once in a while I get to work with a playwright like Gabe, and he may learn something in the process and in a conversation I have with him, and that's exciting. So again, it's just letting go of stuff that I was really intense about, and just seeing where the opportunities were. That worked for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Jenna, what about for you?
Well, my hustle led me to academia. I think I got really tired of what I was doing and the field that I was in, kind of feeling ghettoized. And I love that word, so I'm gonna keep borrowing it, Teresa. But there was such a huge, I felt like there was such a huge lack of truly understanding the complexity and the nuance and the benefits of arts. It's it's, you know, I think a lot of how I was observing the arts being advertised, or the benefit was, and I particularly work with young people mostly, is young people have fun. It keeps them off the streets. And I'm like, that's just the top layer of the onion. Like, they, in any art form, when they truly get to participate and collaborate in it, they're learning how to give meaning to their own stories. Because most of the time when they're participating in something, whether it's a class or a public art project, their insight, their perception, their perspective is asked to be infused into what they're doing, whether they're acting or making a mural. And when an art program project understands that, you can really pull that out and really tease that out. And when you don't, it kind of happens anyway. It could happen better if you really nuance that and you really understand it. But without a doubt, and that's among artists, but without a doubt, people who fund it don't get it. They kind of naturalize the idea if you throw art at something, it's just going to do something. And then dismiss what it does because it gets consistently categorized as they're having fun, or they're getting them off the streets, or they're bringing the arts to them. And then there's an argument I have about, like, whether young people, youth, children, whatever age, people have art that they bring into a room. So I wanted to really explore that understanding of collaboration. Like, whether it's a classroom setting or a workshop or a public art piece, youth, your participants are bringing aesthetics in with them. They're bringing in an understanding of what art is. Whether they feel entitled to call what they understand as art is another story. But if we are better capable of understanding how to help people get past those insecurities about, like, oh, you know, I like to doodle. No, that's amazing. You've got some amazing skill here. You may not like the image, but we can pull it out. You know, we can tease out the scales and build on it. And I think most of the communities that I've worked with were very accustomed to not feeling entitled to call what they do art or artistic. It got relegated to craft, or it got relegated to hobby. And for me, because I came into it as I came into my identity as an artist with an activist mentality that really got under my skin. And I just wanted to try to create language, try to create vocabulary, try to create a more expansive conversation where people who are participating in existing traditions can start talking with each other about how are they able to get to the depth of that person's identity, that depth of that person's real engagement with folks, because it's happening all over the place. But the funders don't require that you be one of those people to get money, is been my criticism. If your proposal looks really good, then you can get the money. There tends to be a lack of really understanding when they're reading a proposal whether that artist knows how to get that stuff out. Usually I think it's a reliance on numbers, or it's a reliance on, like, the expansive communities that you're able to get. And that sometimes that means people are able to get to really deep, rich engagement. Sometimes it means you got a lot of people and a lot of ants, a lot of worker bees who can help get stuff done. I've seen plenty of projects that it's like, and that was supposed to do something, okay.
Many foundations give away a lot of money without a site visit.
Right.
They never even come to.
Right.
Yeah, they're just looking at a well-crafted proposal and a history.
Right. So my going into academia was trying to create theory, and then what I found in academia was most scholarship, and Chris has heard about this, and Rose has heard about this, because I can rail in about it, but most scholarship that I've seen about community-based art is by scholars who are not also holding a practice in it. So they tend to write about theater participation or theater engagement or dance engagement. It tends to be 3 clicks away from being criticism, the way you would critique theater, without any understanding of the process underneath and how we get to the products that we present to each other as part of the meaning of what we're doing. And then the other set of art scholars that actually do have practice tend to focus in on undergraduate experience with community engagement, and not so much with the young people or the adults or the elders that they're engaging with from a community outside of the school context. So what is So a key strategy for me is trying to like literally pull and suture these conversations together to try to highlight how scholars can be a better resource for community members and really try to shift that tide of like, I always feel like there's a lack of impetus among scholars on college campuses, academics, to be relevant for practitioners, to help us develop a vocabulary, a really nuanced vocabulary of what we do, to help see that it's not the project that needs to be forklifted, but maybe the perspective that was used to create something that was relevant. Like what were your insights about the particular community and how, and the aspects about you being relevant for that community, maybe that's what we need to understand. And that's what we can forklift out and bring to another situation, which is, okay, find somebody who really understands the community, really figure out what aesthetics, what art is going on, what's the culture of the place. Maybe something else works, not a flea market. Maybe it's, I don't know, whatever.
Maybe it's bingo
maybe
every
it's
Thursday
bingo
or
every
whatever,
Thursday.
right.
Woodland Hills
Right.
is really woodsy. Maybe it's, like a hiking tour or something, I don't know. But it's like, it's the lens that you use to get you to an effective project, not the project itself. Like it's all these coupling things. So that's what has become my strategy.
Teresa,
So just sort of a comment. I think what I'm hearing is that it's more about outcomes than process. And so it's like, what do you get at the end? You get this many students who did X, Y, Z, and who stayed in school, or all of those good things, but they're social service outcomes without understanding that the reason those outcomes even exist is because there's been this incredible process, this rich artistic process that is what is getting us to this other place.
And I have to say, with great irony, the one organization that I have worked with who understood that the best was the Department of Justice. The Office of Juvenile Justice really understood there are short-term, medium-term, long-term goals, right? So they understood when they were working with us anyway that they want to get to this long-term goal, but it's this little seed, it's this little moment here that's going to get them there. And so all they want you to do is just do your one thing. Because we'll deal with that, but we know your one thing makes everything else easier for us. So just do you, right? And that is,
but how did they recognize that what you could provide them had the value that they were looking for?
I think because they have scholars who are very attached to youth development and human development. And so that they have done a lot of work across, because they know that all of the things they want to prevent in terms of crime are really a result of collapses in development. Right, and so whether it's
Somewhere
an
along the
individual
way,
or it's a community, so like they were funding us and they funded a program for nurses to come into the homes of teen mothers. And they're like, we don't know why, but we find that when you send a mentor, a nurse, just to come to do a medical checkup, at the third visit, the teen asks this question: so, how did you get to be a nurse? Right? And then at this visit, so the outcome, so there are better health outcomes, which is really important in the prevention of crime long term, but then there's also a higher graduation rate, a higher GED rate. Once that mother is educated and healthy, her child is less likely to be involved in crime, right? So they have done all this thinking because they can't afford to legislate or incarcerate their way out of their problem. Now, the adult system is very different, but the juvenile system, they sort of they have been forced by circumstance to see themselves
because the adult
differently.
system, sort of accepts the reality, and I think the juvenile system is actually working to, as much as they can, change the reality. There's still, in a sense, hope.
Yeah, and there's many levels and layers to it, and I can't speak for the whole system, but I know that I found it really ironic that it was easiest for me to have this conversation with justice.
And it's juvenile justice.
They call it JJ. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And delinquency prevention is really the key piece. And so for them, I was articulating our work as employment and literacy, because we pay students to do the work. So they were like, perfect, that's what we need. And we said, yeah, we got this art thing, perfect, because they're really going to start asking themselves questions. Perfect, because they're really good. And then it turns out that the people in the office, and this is in DC, the people in the office on a policy level they had piano lessons when they were little, they sang in the choir, right? They had art classes. So even though they were lawyers and they were
they come out of
academics,
families where they got some arts.
They got arts, and they had an understanding of what it was for them. And they had an understanding that it was not actually good to limit that to those with privilege, but that those without privilege actually needed more and not less. Which I gotta tell you, shocked the hell out of me in, the previous administration. That was really what was happening, but on that level, those were the conversations they were having. It was really interesting.
I see your hand. What I actually want to do is, we've been in this configuration for a little bit, and we're a small enough group that I feel like if we kind of bunch in maybe groups of 3 or 4 to give folks an opportunity, certainly each of these folks will be in a smaller group, and we'll just spend like 15 minutes there. It's about 8:26, so I know we were trying to end at 8:30. Could we go in these small groups for another like 10, 15 minutes? Is that okay?
Yeah, we were going to end at 8:30 and then just sort of allow for social time and networking and just, but I think let's have a little small time.
So we'll do this. We'll give you a 10, and then I'll just check in and see where you are, and if you feel like you're ready to transition into the networking time, the social time, I want to support that.
Or stay in it.
Or stay in it, however you want to go. Yeah. So just to help with the breaking up, so Jesus is going to be in a smaller clump of 3 or 4. Jenna will be in a smaller clump of 3 or 4, and Pearson will be in a smaller clump. And so I invite you to find someone to be in a clump with, some people. Yes, and then what we're going to ask you to do is just to write as the report back, as a way for us to help track this for ourselves in the field. We're going to ask you to just write a little Post-it note or a bigger Post-it note about an aha moment you have, so that we can share this. Yeah. So there's no formal, like, somebody's got to take hardcore notes. But I do want to allow folks to continue these kinds of conversations. You have these 2 prompts here. You can talk a little bit about your approach to your creative and engagement and community engagement work. And the same question we've been talking about. What has been one key approach or strategy to your organizational or individual survival? Yeah.
Or I think even just riff on
totally
what's in the room. And
yeah. And I feel like all these things, we've talked about financial models, but I appreciate, Jenna, what you've been talking about is like, what are our different strategies about how we're surviving, right? Whether it's a partnership with the Department of Justice, or a partnership with a social service agency, or a school, or another larger organization. All these things are in play. Yeah? Cool. Hooray. So we're gonna